Hey everyone, how you doing? So, trivia. You know my channel very well if you're aware of my knowledge on some games, I'm sure. I kind of love learning about and discussing random factoids I discover and hear about in gaming. I mean, the very reason I even get into a lot of my favorite games has been due to trivia, which is no joke. As a more recent example, I've found myself loving the Persona franchise, and beforehand I heard about some trivia regarding the locations in Persona 5, like LeBlanc, and I was just fascinated. This stuff is so cool to me. And over time, that craving for knowledge and random trivia has drastically increased for me. I often spend some of my free time just reading articles and looking through the cutting room floor for various franchises I like or am getting into. And that recent hobby has grown into a video topic that I can very easily talk about for a stretch of time. So, welcome to the first video in a series where I'll discuss PvZ trivia and fun facts. I already do shorts, so sure, why not? And for today's video, we'll just be discussing PvZ1, specifically the Game of the Year edition for most of this information. The reason why it's specifically this game is because I found so much random stuff while doing research for the video, and frankly, PvZ1 deserves a video of its own. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. First of all, this is a comment from the official PvZ channel I got on a recent upload. This isn't trivia, I just wanted to share it, because that channel even being used is wild to me. Okay, now let's talk about actual trivia. We'll start off small and discuss some general trivia about the game itself, as well as early and cut content. When it comes to general game knowledge, one of my favorite pieces of trivia has to do with the release dates of this game, with the earliest being May 9th of 2009, which is well known, and the latest for any particular device being January 30th in 2013 for the BlackBerry 10 phone. Huh. Alright then. In terms of other game knowledge, the soundtrack of PvZ1 is absolutely iconic. So much so that it ended up being sold separately as an album. And if you buy this separate thing, there's a unique 9-second interlude of Crazy Dave talking before it jumps into the music. That's pretty neat stuff. Additionally, every in-game song that features on the soundtrack has an alternate version which sounds really off if you listen to it. Now, I would play an example, but people have been recently getting false flagged for PvZ1 music, so you can find a playlist online and compare for yourself, I promise, it's weird. Alright, moving forward to some early content for the game, the Plants vs. Zombies name itself was changed a lot in development. There's so many names they tried, and looking at just a few of them is really neat. Also, very old builds of this game used PNGs of autumn leaves and stuff like that for the background of the levels to represent the lawn. This looks so goofy, but it's oddly charming too. But listen, I know what you guys really want here. You want to hear about some of the old and cut content. Well, I gotcha. Just a little bit at least. We'll run through some early designs first, since I picked up a lot of trivia on this stuff because I find it interesting. For starters, the nighttime shroom plants all looked much more visually distinct from one another in their early renditions, which I've always been pretty interested in. It's just cool seeing how they're all so much easier to point out. Though admittedly, they're all eye-catching in their modern renditions too, so I suppose the color changes felt redundant to the team. Also, Split Pea's other head had dangling limbs in its concept art. Ew. Oh, and have you ever wondered why Buckethead zombies have red on their bucket tips? Well, this is due to the old Buckethead design actually being a painter, and that mark on the bucket is red paint. There's something fun to learn. Moving on to cut or reworked content now, there's a few trivia bits I wanted to discuss. For one, iceberg lettuce was almost in PvZ1, though it would have functioned like a snow pea, so in retrospect, I'm glad PopCap held off on adding it. And we were also going to see a plant called a yampoline, which was intended to be an obstacle that would have bounced zombies over plants. A plant being an obstacle, why did they consider that? That's so weird. Finally, there was a dog walker zombie and a dog zombie, which was being considered for a while too. These were pretty neat, since the ideas were most likely turned into chicken wranglers and chickens respectively. And to round out some of the early uncut content here, I've just got random straggling trivia that doesn't fit anywhere else. For one, a lot of the unused dialogue in this game has a distinct lack of Crazy Dave in it, which would suggest he didn't play as big of a role in the adventure for a while. Also, Zombonis and Pogo Zombies have seed packets in the files of the game, which suggests that they were going to be used for iZombie at one point. Though when you place Pogos through modding the game, they jump over their brains. Well, oh, and here's a neat one to finish this section. You know that one infamous ice level? Well, it was just a leftover from an April Fool's dev build in 2008. Yep, there's no deeper lore there, that's all the level is. The more you know. Okay, now let's move on to the biggest section I've got for this video, trivia within the game itself. Well, kind of. Yeah, I know these sections are oddly labeled, but there's a lot of trivia I've got. First of all, Crazy Dave is based off of a real person, specifically a PopCap employee named David Roll. I hope that's how it's said. It's always interesting finding out stuff like this, and it makes you really think about what would have happened if this choice wasn't made and Dave was somebody else entirely. Additionally, the gem icon for this game is either exactly or a near replica of the blue diamond from the Bejeweled franchise. Neat stuff. Oh, and if you laid Zomboss's Zombot on the roof facing horizontally, it wouldn't be as long as the roof itself. Why would you want to know this? No clue, but now you do. Some other weird gameplay trivia I have is stuff we can just rapid fire. Walnut's eye can very rarely twitch, which is neat, and not our only piece of trivia for this guy, you'll see why soon. Some zombies also take some time to get over Cobb Cannon, such as Pogo Zombies, and others flat out can't get over him at all, such as Dolphin Zombies. Though that one's weird because there's one particular case where they kind of can, but it's complicated. Listen, whatever, it's interesting. And before we get into the real meat, coffee bean is the only plant that zombies won't directly attack or devour. Yeah, there's something odd. Whenever zombies are eating a coffee bean affected plant, they'll just eat the plant you're trying to wake up, not the coffee bean. Neat stuff. Alright, moving forward for this section, we'll just divide trivia by game mode, starting with the Zen Garden. Marigolds are the only plants in PvZ1 that can be purchased for the Zen Garden, but following that trivia, there's an odd glitch/bug that's exclusive to a Chinese version of this game, where you have a 1% chance to get a different plant if you buy a marigold. Weird, but helpful to know too. And as for some trivia regarding the plants and other locations, plants like jalapeno and cherry bomb, which are instant use, vibrate in place when they're sitting in your Zen Garden, just one step away from blowing up. Additionally, sea shrooms are happy in the aquatic tank area, which heavily implies that the tank is located in some nighttime area or flat out is in nighttime. Oh, and also, you can apparently tap the glass of the tank. I found this part out recently and I just figured you guys should know too. It's kind of interesting. We'll go ahead and discuss some minigame trivia too, though don't expect me to linger on this stuff for too long as there's an abundance of information for just about every minigame ever made. To start out, Slot Machine is the only time in the entirety of PvZ1 that sunflowers can cost anything less than 50 sun. It's quite a weird detail, but once you notice it, you can't forget it. Seeing stars is also an interesting minigame, as you have the choice to not choose starfruit as a seed packet in some versions of this game. Not selecting it means you're stuck indefinitely and cannot beat the level until you reset. Just amazing. The launchstreams.txt file of Zombie Nimble Zombie Quick shows an unused name for the level simply titled Zombies on Speed. And if you're like me and you understand the joke, it's kind of crazy to imagine that PopCap left this in the final game at all. It's dark, but you know what, it's kind of funny too. And finally, Pogo Party is the only minigame to play the music Graze the Roof. And because that's kind of boring, the delay between the level starting and the first zombie spawn is 55 seconds. Boom, information bomb. We also have some small things here from the Limbo minigame page, but because this content isn't technically in the final game, I won't discuss it for long. The first piece of trivia is that this page exists, and almost every minigame here works too. It's weird, but yeah, it's true. One such minigame here is titled Intro, and if you click it, you get a playable version of the opening cutscene level for the adventure, which is honestly so cool to me. Playing stuff you see in opening cutscenes for games will never not be cool, and this is no different. And finally, there's another minigame here titled Upsell, which tries to sell the player on the full version of PvZ1, despite them owning it. This was likely used for the free demo of the game, but still, interesting to note. Next up is some puzzle and survival mode trivia, and for brevity, I decided on just like 2 to 3 pieces for each mode. Starting with Vase Breaker, the iOS version of PvZ1 calls it Vase Breaker. It may not seem odd, but look at how it's written. Why was this change made? We also have some back-to-back trivia here, with Vase Breaker not only being the only main game mode in PvZ1 where left-facing plants can be placed, but it's also the only puzzle game that appears in the adventure mode. Cool stuff. Additionally, with iZombie, Sunflower is the only cardboard cutout that appears in every level and endless variation. While it seems like a detail that's hard to miss, you might have never thought about it until it was pointed out for you. Also, pole vaulters and balloon zombies lose their poles and balloons when placed in lanes that have no cardboard plants. It's a weird choice, but I suppose it makes sense. And finally, we have a couple for Endless too, one of these being that the zombie bobsled team is the only main game zombie type to not appear, which is odd, but sure. And to add on to that, after flag 107,374,183, the zombie spawns break, and only flag zombies spawn for a while. They don't really begin to fix themselves until the 32-bit integer limit is reached, which is kind of weird. And to round off this section, we have a lot of fun almanac entries to cover, so let's blaze through these too. Torchwood is illiterate. Amazing start. Also, reading through some of the plant entries almost depicts the idea of fighting the Horde as a job, which always interested me as a kid. It's really neat to think that this world is flourishing with plants who might work like 9 to 5s and stuff like that. It's fun. Though to add on to that realism, Imitator's Almanac entry implies that at least one zombie war occurred in the past. Oh no, and he's a veteran! I sure hope his government treats him well. Moving to some zombie info, the Ladder Zombies ladder costed $8.99 in the game. Adjusted for inflation nowadays, provided that it was purchased in the US, it would roughly be $13.18 today. I love pointless trivia. And the final piece here is Zomboni's Almanac entry, which is a joke about how the name of the zombie got too close to Zamboni, which is a very real company that advertises, guess what, the same vehicle the Zomboni zombie drives. So you can probably understand why this entry is as weird as it is. And that's general gameplay trivia. That was a lot, wasn't it? Well, it's about to get even more interesting, as this next portion of the video will be focused on port trivia. Admittedly, this is a topic that I constantly discuss on my channel, so don't worry, I'm not going to try to waste your time with this next set. But with that being said, let's talk mobile first. One of the only mobile icons that PvZ1 had for a while was an icon of a PvZ2 browncoat zombie, instead of it being, you know, PvZ1 browncoat. What? Why? Also, for most mobile ports, you have to buy a lot of the minigames. That sucks. But you get the benefit of being able to use explosive walnuts in just about any level, which is pretty sweet. In addition to this, have you ever seen those restaurant tablets where you could play PvZ1 on them? Well, those tablets are running a unique iPad port of the game, apparently. I'm not entirely sure if these are even the full game, but I'm not about to steal one of these tablets to beat the adventure and find out. So yeah, sorry. Some things will always remain a mystery. What isn't a mystery is what resides in the Nintendo DS port of this game, which has several very unique minigames, one of these even replacing the pool level's typical minigame. Cool stuff. This version of the game also sometimes came bundled with a DS stylus in the shape of a pea shooter head, and according to several sources, Walmart had exclusive zombie Yeti heads too, which is weird, but also really interesting to know about. And finally, for handheld stuff, the DSi port sucks a lot. Like it's missing content and it only has one unique minigame to make up for that? This blows. Moving on. The console ports of this game are also very interesting in their own rights. As an example, they're in a 16:9 aspect ratio, which looks beautiful by the way, and they also feature a new game mode called Versus, which is a multiplayer mode. I'm sure you guys knew that, but what you might not have known is that a Chinese Android TV version exists of the game. And this version just happens to essentially be Kaizo PvZ1. Like, okay, the levels start out normal enough, but the game slowly gets harder and harder over time, to the point where you're fighting Gargs in the late pool levels. What? And then by 4-1, the game reverts its difficulty to base PvZ1, even being easier on occasion. My guess is that this game was never finished, but like, why even bother releasing it? You know, like, sorry, it's just an interesting port. I apologize for rambling. But on that topic of interesting ports, several other Chinese editions of PvZ1 exist, including one that has a batch of levels which introduces some PvZ2 plants into PvZ1. These are all pretty cursed, but one plant in particular here is Dandelion, which looks horrible. But this is the iteration of this plant that would be used as a base in Chinese PvZ2. That's kind of PvZ1 trivia, I guess. Listen, it's my video, it's fascinating, I'm gonna throw it in. And to round off this section, a Java port exists and it's really cut down but still playable. And there was also once a PvZ port that gave you a chance to earn real-world money by competing in challenges. Wow, very Pac-Man of you, PopCap, I guess? So that was a pretty simple section. Admittedly, I already have multiple videos discussing PvZ1 ports, so yeah. If you've watched my content for a while, you probably knew about most of this. But still, it's interesting. And this final section is no different, which would be the collab and out-of-game trivia, which is just info that's sort of involved with the game, but mostly just based off of it. With that in mind, let's jump right in. Let's begin with some random trivia that doesn't really fit cleanly anywhere else, but also sort of counts, I guess. For one, Stinky the Snail appears in both Garden Warfare 1 by name and BFM by design, sort of. I'd like to imagine that both are the one and only, but I can't imagine who else it would be. Following this, the only PvZ1 plants to never make it into another mainline entry are Coffee Bean and Gold Magnet. At least, if you don't consider the Chinese PvZ games. If you do consider those too, then it's probably just Gold Magnet, which is kind of wild to me. Poor bastard. Also, at one point in time, there was an online Zombitar creator, though it's unfortunately been gone for quite a while now. Big shame. And finally, for this little section, it's implied in PvZ2's Sunflower's Almanac entry that the music video she did in PvZ1 skyrocketed her career, which I always found to be a fun little callback. Now, as for the collaborations, I decided to spice up my picks here since I covered PvZ collabs a long while ago. Well, there's the World of Warcraft one I'm sure many of you diehard fans know about. This collab essentially let you play PvZ in the game, and it gave you a sunflower pet as a reward for completing it, which is cute. There's also The Sims 3, which threw in a PvZ plant or two, cool I guess, whatever. But did you know about Peggle Knights having a PvZ based board? Yeah, I bet you didn't. And wow, it's tough. 2 balls left. If we get one of these, it's GG's. Okay. No! Oh, and speaking of balls, there was also a pinball game that was based off of PvZ1's Daytime Lawn. That's pretty cool. And to round off this video, I have just 4 more pieces of trivia. For one, a PvZ version of the board game Risk exists, and apparently it could still be purchased. I'm considering getting this for myself just as a collector's item. Though even more interestingly, an entirely original PvZ board game was being made at one point, though it sadly got scrapped. Rest in peace. And just to end off the video with the wildest trivia I could find, there was a point in time where you could buy official PvZ lottery tickets. What? I don't really know much about these, but this shocked me when I was researching info for this video. Just wow. Oh, and what's number 68, you might ask? Well, that's the exact amount of plants you get throughout PvZ2's Adventure Mode, and that's the game we'll cover next in this little series. So with that, I'll end this video here. It's been a very long time since I've made any longer trivia video on this channel, so I hope you guys enjoyed a change of pace. Don't worry, I'll be tackling the upcoming PvZ2 challenge video as soon as I can. My schedule has just been very busy recently, so I apologize for that. But since you're here, I might as well ask. Did any information in this video surprise you? Did anything not? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'd also like to give one big final shout out to my extra YSI channel members, those being Dan B, GlitchinTheCode867, Nicholas Vankowski, Song, and Johnny Homeowner. Alongside my one normal member, thank you all so much for your continued support, y'all rock. And now, as for me here, I'll be recovering. Yikes. God, I'm so sorry, I cannot talk for a very long time. Peace.